regain. I'm here. So yeah, the reason that I wanted to do that is because, or the reason that my mind always starts, when I'm just wasting my time, or when I'm, thinking of things, my mind will go to, how would I explain what I'm doing to somebody who doesn't know anything about this? And the reason that is because that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to ask all of these questions of somebody who had no concept of them, I wanted to be able to ask these questions as somebody who had no concept of really anything. And the reason that I had no concept of anything is because I grew up, I'm going to use the word sheltered a lot. It really isn't sheltered. It was, what's another way to say that? Removed in a lot of ways. Removed from the world around me, removed from life, removed from common sense. We're just removed. So I spent a lot of my time feeling lost and feeling like I didn't know what was going on, and that lack of knowledge made me very anxious. It would always I had a lot of anxiety, and I learned to ask a lot of questions of myself. I learned to be very observant, and I learned to be very analytical as a way to fill in the gaps. As a way to fill in the gaps of, and also I don't want to hear comments about how I did my makeup. I'm 30-something years old. It is what it is. I'm not, again, this is something for this is what my hands will have something to do, not to teach people. That might be some other video if somebody's interested in that. But so yeah, to fill in the gaps of understanding, the gaps of information that made me feel very anxious on a day-to-day basis. And it would be something simple like, how people did their hair, or how people, wore their clothes, or the things that people said. If I didn't recognize something, I didn't recognize a word, I didn't recognize a concept, immediately I would just, what does that mean? And what is this? Is that something I should know? There was always that underlying question of, is that something I should know? And I don't feel like that's normal. I don't think that that's a normal part of growing up. I think that or in a healthy environment, kids will approach that with curiosity and excitement. And I approached not knowing something with a shit ton of anxiety, and just feeling like, oh no, it's like something else that I wasn't told, something else that wasn't shared with me. So I guess background on that is, here's why. I am the daughter of a Pentecostal pastor. And in my particular sect of Pentecostalism, which is within the Hispanic church, it was very much encouraged to be as backwards as possible. No, it was encouraged to just be almost, and antithetical and hostile towards anything of the world, anything of, normal existence. In my particular upbringing, I think that had a lot more to do with my father than it did. That's not true. I think it was the religion, but I think my father really leaned into that because of his own stuff. So I grew up as the daughter of that person in that sort of situation. As a result, and then the other side of that actually is that my mother was raised by her grandmother. And her grandmother was in her 50s when my mother came to stay with her. And she was, a Puerto Rican woman in her 50s in the heart of New Jersey, raising a little girl basically by herself because her husband died when my mom was 14. My mother's grandfather died when she was 14. So, my great-grandmother didn't read or write. She didn't work outside of the home. She didn't really have a lot of information, I think, about that environment. She had a lot of life knowledge and passed on along a lot of wisdom, but there wasn't a lot of, this is how you can ride the bus, I guess. My mom had to figure all that out on her own. So I think that on my mom's side, any information gaps came from that. Whereas on my dad's side, information gaps came from just his general weird, like isolating, his tendency to be very isolating. So anyway, that's how I was raised. I mean, as I get into this, I can give more details, but that's how I was raised. So as I grew up and, normal sort of questions would come up about you're changing bodies and, the internet and just different things that are going around you. It was not an environment where I got a lot of information or I was helped through that information. And I think that for me, it just was probably one of the root causes of anxiety for me. It was very much like, oh no, I have to figure all this out on my own. And I have to do it in a way that's not humiliating for me, because where I grew up, roasting was a daily sport. So you could not show your weakness. You could not just be curious and, oh, what's this mean? I mean, maybe that might be normal for kids, but for sure where I grew up, I wasn't going to throw myself to the lions and openly admit to not knowing something or struggling with something or just being confused by something, because that would just make you the target for the year. Like they would never live any of that down. So that was another cause of anxiety. And it wasn't just school. It was also in my church environment. People will, what youth groups are. It's just here, or not here, but where I grew up, that was just what was done. Like you just made fun of people. You just did. And for me, it caused me a lot of anxiety to be to be the brunt of something to that degree. And, I think that understanding now that I'm, how I process emotions now, and understanding that I am highly sensitive to other people's emotions and my own emotions, all that felt very overwhelming. And there was nobody to help me process all of that. And so that probably led to even more anxiety and just feeling very overwhelmed and feeling like, oh, I'm on my own to figure life out. So that's what I did. All that to say that I spend a lot of time, as I'm now in my 30s, on my own, figuring a lot of stuff out on my own and feeling more confident, more comfortable. I find myself mentally explaining it as I'm doing it and wondering, how would I do this? How would I say this to somebody who had a similar experience as I did? Now, granted, growing up, the internet wasn't as much of a thing. And when it was, I didn't have the kind of access to it that the kids do now. So this may not be as necessary, but I like to think that having somebody there to help you through it is just as helpful. We'll see. I guess I will talk about some of the things that I struggled with and go from there. Um, Number one, I guess you're my body. So I remember, just like every other kid, I'm sure, asking your parents, asking my mom about how babies are made. I asked her, how did that happen? And um and what she said to me, what she said to me was when I was about in the 6th grade, I think. She said to me, "Well, your private area and his private area just touch, just like this, and then a baby gets made. And if it's the right time and if it's God's time, a baby will be made. After they just go like this." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And there was never any other discussion beyond that point to this day. So, and I was never given any other clarity on that. Here's where the shitty part comes in. As I went through a normal sort of your school health class, my memory of this, and I could be wrong, I don't think I am, but my memory of this is that when it came to sex ed, my mom had me removed from the class in high school. Because this narrative that's going around of, you don't let the school teach your kids about sex. They're going to teach them about, they're going to teach them in their way, and you want to educate them in your way. That's very prevalent in Christian circles or religious circles. That's very much a narrative that exists, where you don't let the world decide for you how you're going to educate your kids. Good in theory, but if you're not supplementing that education, and if you're not actually doing the education yourself, the accurate, actual education, then all you have done is made it so that nobody educates your kids. That's all you've done. So you can't just leave it at, well, you don't let them tell your kids what to do. You be the one to tell your kids or show your kids how you want them to see the world. If you're not actually doing it, all you have done is created a gap. An information gap, a reality gap, an experience gap, a gap. That gap is going to be filled with something regardless. 9 times out of 10, what will happen is somebody who is predatory will come in to fill that gap because they sense those gaps out. They sense them. They see them. They feel them. They look for them. That is all you have done. If you don't take it upon yourself to make sure that your children receive accurate information about themselves, about the world. So, my mom did remove me from that class, and it was just and we never really talked about it. We never talked about how that works. So I had to figure that out on my own, doing my own research as I grew up. Now, I am who I am, so research is more my thing, and I just like being educational about things. Most of the time, though, when that happens for kids, they look to porn. You've left them with no information. They get their information from porn. Whether that's, I obviously think that that's unhealthy, but that's usually what happens. That's not what I did. I went, into research mode, and I spent a lot of time, little by little, as I was comfortable and as it became available to me, using like, articles and, BuzzFeed articles, weirdly enough. Those would be, just give me just to kind of remove the stigma around talking about different kinds of things and how things work and what happens. I just did a lot of my own research. So I guess what I would say to that is there's research about how people do things, and then there's education. In my late 20s, early 30s, as I started dating, a whole other level of anxiety came out when I realized that maybe my experience and my understanding of certain things wasn't going to match the kinds of people that I was dating. And I just became very anxious about what the perception of that would be, how those conversations would go, how accepted I would be because of that. I just, again, anxious. So I started reading. I started looking for different books, and thank God, like, just thankfully, by the time this came around, there's been a lot more done in this area. A lot more conversations have been had, a lot more research, a lot more study has been done in this field than when I was growing up. So I'm really grateful that I had that, and I'm really grateful that I have the ability to share that with you guys. So that's what I'm going to do. So the goal is you're in a cult. You're planning your escape. You're educating yourself. You're filling your own gaps. And you come across this video, I'm going to tell you where to look, and I'm going to tell you where to go and what to do. So yeah. Oh my God, I just messed that up. Ugh. So I'm going to tell you guys some of the stuff that has helped me. Because one of the other results of growing up in that way is anxiety, we've talked about, and then shame. Shame is a big one. Shame is the biggest tool that gets used in that environment to prevent you from asking questions, to prevent you from wanting to know more about the world, to prevent you from being curious, to prevent you from contradicting, just to keep you docile and scared and dependent. Shame comes into play a lot. Shame is very much the biggest weapon in their arsenal of people like that. People who use environments of religion, environments of extreme identity politics to bolster their own sense of security, their own sense of well-being and self-righteousness. People who are drawn to those kinds of environments are deeply insecure. As a caveat, I think there's a difference between people who have come to a genuine experience of faith, and I'm being specific to religion, people who have come to a genuine experience of faith. Should I do a one? There's a difference between people like that and people who traffic in the maintenance of a specific religion and a specific religious practice. That's a different conversation. So, what was I going to say? Yeah, shame. Shame is a big one. Shame is what keeps their control and their false sense of superiority and self-righteousness alive. So there's absolutely, if there's one thing that I would leave you with, is never allow anyone to make you feel shame. Never feel shame for wanting to learn, what you want to learn, for wanting to understand more about your own self, your body, your mind, your urges, your desires, your thoughts, your longings, your struggles. Never, 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 never indulge in the emotion of shame. And when it comes up, I rebuke it. Or just, understand that shame is not natural to you. It's not germane to you. Shame is an outside influence. Shame is something that comes from people outside of you when they want to keep you small and they want to keep you scared. And it is 100% about how that makes them feel. So we started this conversation talking about sex and your body. Let me circle back. Okay. I'm going to be recommending a lot of books and podcasts and videos and things, because that's what has helped me. And if you don't have access to those, I will be here. If for whatever reason, it's easier to talk to me or to hear me explain something and ask questions, then I will stand in that gap for you. If you don't have access to certain books, if getting books isn't an option for you, like I said, I'll be here. And if you're embarrassed, you can private message me. If it's a little, uncomfortable or awkward or just, dangerous, you can private message me. But growing up, like I said, any conversation around my body, around sex, around relationships was covered, dripped, dipped, and just completely covered in shame, embarrassment, just like, oh my God, like the sense of taboo. So obviously what happens is when you have that and then you go in and you try to start to have a healthy relationship, you find it to be impossible. You find it to be, you can't healthily relate to another person if you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself. If you relate to yourself from a place of shame and from a place of disgust or a place of fear, if that's how you relate to your own self, and you're like chastising yourself, or you think that the things that you think and the things that you feel are wrong or evil or just whatever, your inner struggle and your constant, that dialogue that you have with yourself is going to seep into your relationship. And I'm not saying that you have to be fully healed and over that before you can have a nice and healthy relationship. But I think that if we can address some of those, then I think it'll be easier for you to relate to another person. Having said that, bam. I will try to put the link to this in my bio, whatever the hell this is. This is my first time ever uploading any kind of video, so I'll figure that out. But this is called Shameless by Nadia Bowles-Weber. a case for not feeling bad about feeling good about sex. This book, I started reading this book when I was in a relationship with somebody. And I mean, I had tried my best to explain to this person where I was coming from and why it was difficult for me to just be, free with this person, or, why I was struggling, um, why I was scared, when I tried my best to explain that on my own, and it didn't really go over well. But this book was really, really helpful. Let me see if I can pull up some of the things. I actually highlighted a bunch of things in here. Maybe something will be helpful. I don't know. I think this is very much specific to religion. And if you're not coming from a place of religion, then maybe you might not find it as helpful. But I also think that maybe if you have a background, or you're coming from a place of sexual abuse, or just other kinds of stigma that maybe aren't tied to religion specifically, this will still be helpful, because we can have emotions of shame around our bodies and around the act of sex, even if it's not rooted in religion. So this will probably be helpful for you either way. So this is one of them. This is one of the books that was very helpful for me. And the other, I don't know if I'll be allowed to show this one, but this one is not so much about religion. This is about the science and the biology of it all. This book, I haven't even finished this book. As you can see, I'm halfway through it, because it's very medical. It has a lot of medical information, and it talks a lot about the brain science, and it looks like, it's very pink, and it's obviously insinuating that it's specific to women, but it is not. It talks a lot about the brain chemistry in men and women when it comes to how, sex and sexual desire and just normal things with your body happen in both men and women. So maybe the cover of the book, or the look of it, might turn a man off, but if you're a guy, read it. It's very much about what happens in the neurochemistry of my brain and in my body, and why is it that certain things work for me and certain things don't. My partner is this, I'm that, we're struggling in this way, what's happening. And it takes it outside of the cultural explanations that we typically will get from movies or porn or TV or whatever. And it takes it into, no, actually, here's the cycle of your hormones, and here is how it looks in your brain when you go from this to that. And here's what kinds of things might work as you're learning your own body and your partner, and how you guys work well together. It's very much about, I believe information is a tool. That's why there should be no cap on it. Like, if that tool works for me, no pun intended, if that tool helps me build a better life for myself, why is there a limit on that? Why is there a cap on that? So that's what that book is. It's very much like, hey, this is how you navigate. Let me explain how this thing in here works with the rest of this, which then affects the way that you engage with other people. Let me explain that. Let me help you out with that. That's what that book is. So it's very helpful. It's like I said, that's taken me a while. It's kind of a she makes it more interesting because she'll put stories in there, but it is very much scientific. So I recommend it. Uh so those are my two book recommendations, my two expert recommendations. At this point, I have listened to and read and watched a lot of experts in neurochemistry, in relationships, in hormones, in spirituality, not religious, but like, from Buddhists to, I don't know, and every other kind. Tantric experts, just people who understand and who have spent time in understanding the human experience. So I have financial experts, I spent a lot of time in that. So I think that I want to make it easier for somebody who might be trapped or locked or stuck to fill the gaps in and transition from where they were or what was done to them to where they want to be. And the whole goal of it is to understand that it's your choice. These are your choices. This is your life. This is your experience, and you get to make it what you want it to be. You get to decide when and how and to what extent and the why of what you do and what you want to be and what you want to build. And how you want to experience the world, you get to decide that. And it can be as fast or as slow or as unique as you need it to be. And I just want to be for you what other people who don't know me and who I've never spoken to, but who I consider mentors and guides for me, I want to be to you what they have been to me. So that's what this is about. I want to help you become unsheltered.